I'd like to welcome everybody to the fourth Scene Vault podcast, Zoomcast. I will introduce my host, Steve Wade. He has been with us for every call so far. Steve?
Yes, sir. And my pleasure to be here with you guys and Rick again, and especially with Randy LaJoie. May I tell one quick Randy story?
Have at it, man.
All right. This happened at Atlanta. He may or may not remember this, but it's happened at Atlanta. And me and a couple other guys were outside his hauler for some reason. But we were all sitting there having a conversation when the Budweiser trophy girls walked by, dressed in their very tight white bathing suits. And we didn't say anything for a few minutes, just followed them with our eyes, just watched everything. Finally, Randy spoke up and said, "You know, guys, we got to take these girls back to our wives and say to them, hey, these are the templates. What are you going to do something about it?" And I said, "Are you trying to get us killed?" But he was right, you know.
Steve, just to let you know, Randy is on his wife's iPad.
I will not be held to blame. I'm just a messenger.
We're going down in flames already.
I thought that was funny, though. Randy always had a gift for that sort of thing.
Always have time for the fans.
There you go. Have at it, Rick.
All right. Obviously, we have Randy LaJoie on the call this week. Randy won a total of 15 Busch Series races. He captured 2 Busch Series titles, winning it all in 1996 and 1997, which also gave Base Motorsports 3 consecutive Busch Series titles after Johnny Benson won it all in 1995. Randy is also a 3-time winner of the Daytona Busch Series race. And Randy, if I'm not mistaken, you are the only series regular ever to win it more than once. Is that correct?
Good possibility.
Okay.
Especially with 3 different teams.
Yeah. You won it with Base Motorsports, with Finch, and also Evans. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Now, again, this week, I have you muted. And if you have a question, just let me know in the chat window. And when I call on you, I will unmute you. So I think I've got it set up to where I can unmute you, but you can't unmute yourself. I think a lot of what we've been doing in the past, I've unmuted you and then you've muted yourself as we've gone back and forth. So we will try it that way. So we will go ahead and fire off with some questions. Our first question will come from Brian Hallman. Brian, go ahead.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. LaJoie.
No problem.
You had a stellar Busch Grand National career, 350 races, the 15 wins, the 2 championships. But over the whole course, you only ran 44 Cup races. Why did you not make the jump?
Well, it was very hard when I was with Hendrick filling in when Craven got hurt in the Budweiser car. That was an opportunity. The Budweiser people loved me. I had a personal service agreement with them since I was a champion. Got along wonderful. Had a great opportunity there. But I also had 2 young boys at home, and they were both getting bigger, and they wanted to do more stuff. Well, you can't do both. When you're a big fish in a little pond with the Busch guys, you know what? I mean, we worked really hard to stay on top. Well, then you go on the Cup side, that's a whole different ballgame. Those guys play for real, and if it's not 24/7, you know what? You're not giving it what the guys are going to give it that are going to win. And at that time in my career, I said, okay, you know what? I could stay on Saturdays and have Sundays with the kids. And that's what I did.
And let me ask one more thing real quick. I know that drivers will get perks from sponsors. Tony Stewart's talked about his Burger King Gold card he used to have. What was the best perk you ever got from a sponsor?
Bob Evans people. I mean, Budweiser was always good. I mean, having a personal service contract with them was always good. You know, it was nice to have a party at my shop and have a beer trailer show up with 5 kegs and however many cases. And that sure did go a long way. But Bob Evans had give us gift certificates, and the kids were small. I mean, the kids were in middle school. Well, I mean, instead of apples, you know, they gave the teachers gift certificates to Bob Evans. So I'm not sure if they breezed through a lot quicker than they should have, but they seemed to go over well, Bob Evans gift certificates.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next question comes from Hallie Emery. Hallie, go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. Hey, Randy, how are you tonight?
Doing great.
Hey, I got a question. I've been watching NASCAR since about 1983 or 84, and the first time I remember hearing your name would have been the Twin 125s in 1984. Of course, we all have seen the video of your crash. I remember the name Snellman on your car. Could you tell me a little bit about that company and your association with the people that owned the car that you drove?
I was a partner in that car, myself. Bob Johnson was the crew chief. He's a Hall of Famer. He won Talladega with Ronnie Bouchard in Race Hill Farms car. And then 2 brothers, the Snellman brothers. They were just Kai and Yote. They had funny names, but they were just really, really good racing people. They grew up racing with my dad at Danbury, Connecticut, with Jimmy Smith. They always had a race car with their name on it, Snellman Construction. So we had formed a corporation. I took all my modified stuff. Bob took all his stuff, combined it all, and with those guys kind of paying the bills, we went racing. And, you know, we went to Daytona not knowing a whole lot. We had a couple motor issues early on, and we bought a motor from Petty, and we put it in for the 125s. And I knew I had more power than I ever had because I was spinning the tires going through the gears. And that was just coming before the green. So when we started tail end because we had changed motors, and I was coming through the field, I ain't lifted yet. I was like, okay, this is cool. Yeah, until I got to Sterling Marlin. And then it wasn't so cool after that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, our next question comes from Robbie Porter. Robbie, go ahead.
Randy, obviously you've had a great career, but I'm interested just to hear what your thoughts are when I say James Finch, just to kind of pull your cord and see what comes out.
Good man. Good man. I have James Finch. Is the only car owner that did not nickel and dime the driver. Every car owner I had nickel and dime, not James Finch. He didn't. What do you want? This is what I'll pay you. Okay, you get 50%. And here's the checks. He would give you a photostatic copy of the check that he cashed, and give you 50% of it. He's the only guy that paid you like that.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty straight shooter.
And you know what? You can almost have a good time with the guy.
Yeah. It seems like with the Red Cup, you might be able to manage that.
He might know people. Yeah.
Yeah. Any owner who owns a bar might be the guy you want to drive for.
He's a good man. I tell you, I got nothing but good things to say about James. James, you know, we won a couple races. We gave away a lot more than we won, but that's what you do. I mean, we were always fast, but we left a handful out there. That's for sure. Yeah, but you'll always do that.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on it.
No problem.
Okay, our next question comes from Craig Dedman.
Maybe not.
All right, Craig, go ahead.
Hey, Randy. With the Safer Racer involved in now, that started from you designing your own seat because of the NASCAR changing. You couldn't have your fiberglass seat anymore. And from what I understand is after all the accidents and unfortunate deaths around 2000, you kind of expanded that to other drivers. So about almost 20 years later, do you still get some pushback with these local hobby racers for safety, or with anyone in the top series?
This is the hardest thing I've ever done. You talk about pushback. I mean, this is something that, you know, I think I've done the industry well. I've had competitors thank me because I've sold them a lot of seats, because the people didn't want to pay for mine. They just go pay for a cheap one. So I've had competitors thank me for making sales for them, but they also made their stuff better. And that's just, it's hard to, 99, 2000, when Steve Peterson was at NASCAR, you know, started doing all the safety stuff and seat testing and seatbelt testing. And, you know, he would come by my shop on my go-kart track. We would race go-karts out back. And, you know, he helped me a lot on the safety side and said where we were looking at going. Let's get a load cell so we can see how strong your seats are. We really like what they do, but we want to know how strong they are. Okay, so I did. And we learned together. So then you start and think that there's a lot of short track guys that get hurt, killed, that they just don't know. Well, in 2001, after Earnhardt, they found out. I mean, NASCAR spent a lot of money to find out why. I mean, not only Dale, but Roper, Kenny Irwin, Blaze Alexander, Adam Petty, you know, Kenny Irwin, that handful of guys, you know, same thing. If we would have paid attention to one of them, those other guys would be here. But at least they paid attention with Earnhardt. And, you know, my son is living proof after this year's Daytona 500 that what NASCAR has done since Earnhardt's death, they saved two guys in the 500. I mean, Corey and Ryan Newman, you know, 15, 20 years ago, we were going to two funerals there. And so the NASCAR R&D station. So that's why I wanted to bring that to Short Track America through the Safer Racer program. And it was very hard to get funded. It was very difficult. You go to an event, you know, because you had to go spend a week on the road. So you go to an event. I worked with some partners at the beginning, you know, just to, you know, some racetracks don't even like letting you in for free. You know, no, you got to buy a pit pass. That's why I'll talk to your driver's meeting. I'm going to show you the latest videos that NASCAR has on safety stuff. I'm going to explain to the people what can happen at 30 miles an hour, because none of these guys are going 200, but you can get hurt going 30. So I'll explain that to them, and I'll look at their cars, and I'll give them a report card of what's good and what's bad. And pushback. Technically, I probably only did 10 of them in 15 years, but I'm still at the racetrack, still looking at all the cars. As far as an organizer, I have a Safer Racer program sheet. It's a wonderful sheet. I mean, I do it right in line with your inspection, but a lot of these racetracks don't have inspections at all. So there's no set uniform going through inspection line. Take your money at the back gate and hope you go home. That's what Short Track America is about, and it's sad.
Thank you, Randy.
No problem.
All right. Our next question comes from Eric. Eric?
Hey guys.
Eric, go ahead, sir.
All right, Randy, Rick, good to see everyone here. Randy, wanted to ask you a question about, as a New Englander, how cool is it to see Loudon or New Hampshire get a Busch Series and then a Winston Cup on the schedule?
New Hampshire, I raced there when it was Breyer Motorsports Park. It was a 5/8 mile oval plus the road course. Love that racetrack. That was a lot of fun. So to see where it grew up from, the old style, when I ran there, and I think it was '85 NASCAR North, to what it is today. I've won a couple races there. Corey gave one away there, but it's cool to go there and see what the Bears have done. And now Bruton bought it from the Bears, because I've been a Bear fan since Oxford, when they owned Oxford Main Speedway. They're good people. So now that Charlotte owns it, they're good people up there too. So it's in hands. It's in good hands. They keep upgrading the place. I think a nice little addition was that dirt track right down the street on the grounds for Legends cars and stuff like that, maybe midgets. So that's it's going to be a nice little facility there.
All right. Yeah, that was before I moved out of New England, that was my home track, if you will. So I was just interested to hear how another New Englander, what his reception was for the track up there. So appreciate you joining us tonight.
Wonderful country up there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, our next question comes from Justin Hall. I'm trying to unmute you, Justin.
What do you got there? Right here. Right here. Right here. Right here.
Okay. You got me now?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Randy, I got a curious question about I'm an Earnhardt fan, so don't hold back when I ask you this. I want an honest answer. How do you think, or anything you could say about how Dale Jr.'s arrival to the Busch Series changed your career path in the Busch Series?
It changed the Busch Series because, like any dad would do, you're going to give your boys any resources you have available. And being who he was, he had a lot more resources than all of those Busch Series owners. So he upped the game. That's what he did. He upped the game hard. But they were such a cool group of guys, kids, I mean, and then the Tony was the ringleader. So, I mean, it was fun to watch those guys. But he changed the series. And then after that, to keep up, you had to spend more money. That upped the grade of the series, because like any dad would do. If I had a pocket full, I would give the kid whatever they needed, and they did well.
Yep. Yeah, you could have had 3 in a row maybe if it hadn't been for him, huh?
Well, if we were on our game, we could have been better. Him and Matt were better than us. The team I was with had 3 in a row. So, they were kind of said, oh, this is easy. Well, you know what? It might have been, but when Big E showed up with Little E, it wasn't as easy anymore. Those guys had their act together, and new people were pushing them in the direction of getting their act together. At the end of the day, they had more tools in their toolbox than we had in ours.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed watching you over them years, and thanks for all you've done for the sport.
No problem. I've had a good time.
Take care.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our next question comes from Chris Wolf. Let me get you unmuted there, Chris. Go ahead.
Thanks for joining in, Randy. I had a quick question. I know that you went into pretty good detail during your interview on the Scene Vault about your buddy Roy, but I was wondering if you had any good stories that maybe didn't make it into that interview that would still be okay to share on here.
With who? I don't want to waste my good air even thinking about that, because I still have headaches. I'm a member of a massage monthly club. So the less I think about him, the better I feel.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think for about a good 2 or 3 seasons straight, you guys had like magnets that attracted your cars together quite a bit.
He had a really fast race car. He had a really fast race team, and he was a dart without feathers. And his race car was just so much better than he was, and it was aggravating because you knew his stuff was better than yours. And you're like, oh, this is going to be a tough beat. And then the driver would show up and they go, okay, great. Okay, grab those guns and be a gimmick. See you later.
And now you know why I didn't invite Buckshot to be on the call.
It's all good. He's there and I'm here.
Chris, is that good?
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you. Our next question comes from Fred Petke. Fred, go ahead.
Pardon me. Hey, see, I wanted to ask what made for a better Busch series car, a V6 or V8?
Well, it was the V6s made a lot of noise, and they were hard to keep together. I knew where they were going, where they wanted to go, but there was the difference between the haves and the have-nots were greater with the V6s than they were or are with the V8s, because you had certain guys that were on the Buick program. Jim Ruggles, I think, was the main guy for Buick for a long time, and then you had Moroso's. Moroso was one of the key engine guys, and Mike Fryer and Asheville. So there was a handful of guys that had a heads up on it, where the 9-to-1 V8s, same V8 since 1940. So more guys understood the V8 than the V6, and the parts were a whole lot more readily available for the V8s.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Our next question comes from Chris Perry. Chris, go ahead.
All right, Randy. I'm a local racer myself. Just wondering, what's a ballpark price on one of your seats? You don't have to get into specifics. Wondering what's a ballpark price, and then how would you go about it? Do I have to go down south to come get fitted, or how does that work?
No, we need some measurements. We got to see. I mean, what are you 6 foot tall, 200 pounds?
Yeah, nailed it.
36 waist, 38 waist?
34, yeah.
Okay, you get on the website, give me some pictures and some measurements, and we'll go from there. What are you going to be racing in?
So I run a Mod Light, which is, a dwarf car or a Legend, but the dirt Mod Light. So it's
not my Diamond Series. My Diamond Series will fit good in that.
Yeah, cool.
That's a $1,500 seat, guaranteed for life.
I can't put a price on safety though.
Well, you should.
And then my next question is, so I run a Hans on top of that. How do you feel about the Hans made seatbelts? So like the 2-inch versus the 3-inch?
It's all feel. I mean, certain guys like the over-under. The guys like the 3-inch on their body. The 2-inch fits the Hans better. I never had a 2-inch belt. I always run the 3-inch belt over the Hans.
Right.
It's all whatever you feel. I mean, I did a test years ago with Corey and Casey getting in and out of the race car, and that hybrid device worked. I think it was a second quicker. It was a little less cumbersome getting in and out of the car.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you got to pay attention to, because you're going to have to climb out of these things. That some guys never practice it, but you almost need to. is, you know, you always need the worst case scenario to think.
Yeah.
And I always used to do it. Guys would make fun of me after happy hour. My last practice of the day, I would always climb out the right side window. And just because, so I knew if I had to do that, I could do it. And a lot of people don't do that. So, yeah, Mob Lights, you're looking at a Diamond Series. That'll be good. Get us on the website, send us emails, send us pictures, and 2.5 weeks you'll have one.
Wow, cool. And then my last thing is since you ran the Busch North Series, do you remember ever racing at Holland Speedway up in Western New York?
Where? Holland? Yes. High Bank, right?
Yep.
Yes, very much so. I think I run third there. I was going for the lead and got stuck in the fence. Yeah, nice little racetrack. Still there, right?
It's there, but it's not good right now.
No, okay. The ROC guy, well, nobody's racing now. The ROC guys haven't been up there?
Yep, no, nothing. It fell on hard types, so.
They ain't the only ones. There's a lot of racetracks all over the darn place.
Well, thank you much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Hey, Randy, if you sell a seat off my Zoomcast, what kind of commission do I get?
I can't hear you. You're in a valley. You're breaking up real bad.
How did I know that was coming? All right. Our next question comes from Edwin Turner. Edwin?
Hey, Randy. My question has to do with when you replaced Jimmy Spencer in the CC car. I think it was 1989. Could you tell me a little bit about how that came about, the change? But did you realize what the reaction was of fans because you were in Spencer's car? The quick story is there was a family behind my racing buddy and I at Hickory, and they were going, "Why are they booing him?" It turned out it was your family. It was. He said it's not against him; it's against Jimmy Spencer because he's the former driver. People didn't like him at Hickory.
Correct. Well, how that happened was, okay, I'm working for my dad in the junkyard in Connecticut. Didn't have a whole lot of racing going on up in the Northeast. Went down to Pocono to Brett Bodine. Something happened. He was sick and he might have needed a relief driver. So I went down to Pocono to be a relief driver. Well, I'm BSing with Spencer. And he goes, "Hey, Randy," he says, "you need to talk to Frank." He goes, "I'm going cup racing." He goes, "I ain't going to be able to do the Busch car no more." He goes, "Hell, he'll put you in that thing." I said, "Okay." So I called Frank up and he goes, yeah, okay, I'll put you in it. And I'll put you to work when you get there. And he's like, I got 5 cars and 3 motors and a big shop. And it ended up to be 1 car that was ready. 1 motor was ready. But it got me south. And, that 34 car was a good time. It taught me a lot. And then it was fast. It was fast. Boy, I missed not winning with that car because we had a chance 3-4 times and just left it out there.
All right. Thanks a lot, Randy.
No problem.
Okay, our next question comes from Hallie Emery. Hallie, go ahead.
Randy. Okay, thank you. Randy, you spent most of your career racing in the Busch Series, and of course, Dale Earnhardt and Mark Martin and a lot of the Cup drivers would come down on Saturday and race against you guys. In 2011, NASCAR decided that they were going to quit awarding points to the Cup drivers. They could still run at that time as many Busch races or nationwide at the time races that they wanted to, but no points would be awarded. And a couple of years ago, they limited that to 7. What are your thoughts on the Cup Series drivers coming down into the Xfinity or then the Busch Series when you ran it?
It was so different. We all had pretty much the same equipment. So we didn't care. I didn't care who showed up. I mean, these guys are the best of the best. Bring them. I want to race with them. But then 2001 era, right around there, the influence of technology that got into the series, if you weren't, okay, you look at championships, okay, DEI won 2 with Junior, 2 with Truex. And then PPC was the only one in there with Jeff Green. But other than that, it's been RCR had a 4 or 5 year run, you know, with 2 or 3 different cars. You weren't in an RCR car, they won everything. Now, I mean, Gibbs Cars has been doing it for 10 years now. So the series has changed because of I didn't mind the drivers when they were all in the same equipment. But when you put one of those guys in a car that's already 2/10 faster than yours, okay, you know, how are you gonna compete? So, you know, they have to do something, and they did it, and okay, that's fine, because I think the owners they still got the owners point championships, and the owners are, if I had to guess, Penske, Gibbs, or RCR probably won all the championships in the last 10 years.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, our next question comes from Steve Wade, and Steve Wade wants to know who your favorite Busch Series editor of all time was.
No, I don't.
Val Lucier.
Oh!
Oh, there you go. A dagger in your heart, Rick.
Where's my buckshot
Wait,
T-shirt?
did I just see? Did I just see Stan Creekmore pass?
Yes,
he did.
Yeah.
He died in open heart surgery. Didn't make it.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very sad.
Yeah. All right, Steve. Steve, what's your real question?
Well, he just described the difference between the Busch Series of the past and what is now the Xfinity Series. Just one question. Basically, I sense that you would like things to go back to what they were. I'm not arguing with you about how they're different. I agree with that. But if you had a preference, what would you say?
You know, it's tough to go backwards. You know, with technology, you can't change. You can't unlearn something. And that's every year you learn something makes you go faster. So now with all these engineers in here, you know, these guys, I'm sure they had different things on the car from Sunday Cup race to Wednesday Cup race because they learned something and they did something different. And boy, it's just the keep up to go fast is so much different today than it was. Yeah, in the old days, it wasn't hard to keep up. Now, we didn't have computers. We had guys with handheld stopwatch. Yeah, you had the crew chief watch. Go see the crew chief. He'll lie to you, tell you you're 2/10 quicker because you're going down the next pit stall, see who's faster than you. So, and now there's no lying. Once computers come in, you just look on the board. You're like, oh, man, we're slow. Or you're like, hey, we're going to have a good weekend.
Huh. Thanks.
Okay.
All good.
All right. Our next question comes from Justin Hall. Justin?
Okay.
Justin, go ahead.
All right. So, Randy, what would be your favorite racetrack or a few racetracks that were your top preference?
Enjoyed Dover. Really enjoyed Dover. Won a bunch of races there. Harry Gant and Neil Bonnet taught me how to get around there and look at visual points in the racetrack. And it was really cool to do that. Had a heck of a race with Senior there. Senior was in a Lowe's Food number 87. It was Bullfrog. It was a Lowe's Food 87 Busch car, green. Me and him were having a hell of a race. He was running third. I was a lap down to him. And I had come out a lap. I had to pit. I come out right behind him. And I'm racing my tail off. And I was like, this is Earnhardt. I'm going to pass him. And I got under him a couple times, and I couldn't pass him. Couldn't clear him. And I said, you know what? This sucker is running wide open. I mean, I wasn't running wide open. It was a V6 days, and I was close, but I wasn't there. And I said, this guy ain't lifting. I was like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. So I pulled the belts tight. I got a run, went down into 3, and I haven't lifted, and I run up the hill a little bit, kind of got into his door. He got into my door, and I ain't lifted, and I cleared him, and I got away from him. well, at the end of the day, I think he runs second and I run like ninth. And I went down to the pits, the cup pits, to pay my bills in the parts truck. Well, I go walking by his cup hauler and I hear LaJoie. And I was a youngin'. I mean, I was kind of young. And I was like, this son of a bitch is going to kill me. I said, he's going to kick my ass. And I was like, oh, boy. So he come over, he goes, nice job passing me. He goes, that's the way you pass somebody. I was like, okay, cool. Whew, I made it. I said, yes. I said, the only way I did it, I was like, you taught me something. He goes, what's that? I said, you taught me I could run this place wide open. Oh, yeah. I was like, well, thank you.
There you go. Good stuff.
All right. Our next question comes from Robbie Porter. Robbie, go ahead.
Hey, Randy, another question. Full confession, I screamed terrible things at you at my TV when you guys were at Bristol when I was in high school because I had a buckshot sticker on the back of my 86 F-150. But so, you know, obviously we all know about the feud with Buckshot. We've all really enjoyed listening to both of you guys' sides of recounting that. But, you know, you were so in the spotlight in 96, 97 that I don't think that something could have gone unnoticed. But who's somebody maybe sooner than that or later in your run that maybe didn't get the publicity that the Buckshot feud did that you really had a problem with? And how long did you hold on to that or settle it without somebody picking up on it?
Yeah, years ago, I ran the old NASCAR North in Canada. And we ran throughout Canada. And one night, I wasn't nice to one of the Canadian drivers. So while we were loading up, I had some visitors that didn't speak the language I was speaking. And they were a little bit bigger than I were. And at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't going to mess with their driver ever again. Because when I looked down and my feet were off the ground, and I was like, okay, this is not good. But I remembered I would never mess with that guy again. So, okay, well, fast forward a couple more years, we're at Oxford, Maine, and Dale Shaw, racer up there, he's a customer, friend. He got all over me. I mean, he run me off the racetrack 2-3 times, and I ended up running in front of him, but I was not too happy with him, and he's not a really big guy. And so I went over to visit him after I seen his truck clear out because his brothers were larger than I was. So once the trailer cleaned out, I went in there, and I remember what the Canadians did to me, so I did it to Dale. And I said, you don't ever want to mess with me. Don't ever drive me like that again. I said, we're going to fight. And I put him down, and I walked back to my car. Well, it had to be 10 years later when Dale was driving for Finch. He was driving for James Finch, and we're out South Boston. And they pitted and put 4 gumball tires on. He come back through the field and caught me with 2 to go, and he drove me very clean.
Yeah.
Finch fired him because
Really?
of that. Yeah. He goes,
Wow.
Randy goes, I remember what happened up at Oxford. He says, he says, we're getting along too good. I was like, oh, this is good.
Or you could do like the Presley family business. Family racing has its perks sometime when you take a car full of kinfolk to the track with you.
That's always happens.
Yeah. Well, that's a great story. Thanks.
All right. Our next question comes from Kyle McEwen. Kyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Rick. Hi, Randy. Great to meet you over the Zoomcast. Actually, I'm going to have a couple questions here. So, first off, I'm a diehard Chevy fan, and I've been a fan since about age 4. I'm 29 now, so I remember the late 90s, early 2000s period pretty well. And when you were coming into your own, the Busch Series, one of those titles, but I'm talking about early 2000s plate racing in the Busch Series. As a Chevy fan, even as a kid, I couldn't help but notice a lot of Chevy teams switching over to the Pontiac Grand Prix body, Daytona and Talladega. And I always wondered specifically what about the Aero was so much better with the Grand Prix back then.
The back deck lid. The back deck lid of Pontiac, you could get lower where the spoiler was, I think it was a half inch closer to the ground. So
Okay.
your back spoiler was you had a whole lot less drag than the Chevys or the Fords.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yep.
Another quick question.
Just by the shape, just the way.
Okay. Yeah, that had a cool, sexy contour to the back of that car for sure. Lifelong Mark Martin fan. I know it's kind of weird you drove a Ford forever, but you were obviously tearing up the Busch Series the same time he was in the 90s. Any favorite story about racing with Mark? Cup, Busch, doesn't matter.
I was running Rockingham, and we're leading the show. I always wanted to win at Rockingham, and I think I'm running the bottom. And the spotter's like, Mark's coming, he's running the bottom. Well, I think I'm running the bottom until I get through halfway through 3 and 4, and the 60 car is underneath me. And I was like, I thought I was running the bottom, and he's lower than I was. So I was like, okay. So I was like, I had to change my visual aspect of what line to take. But Mark was, I mean, with him in that Winn-Dixie car, golly, I seen a throwback version of it at Hickory. A couple of years ago, they had a late model show with throwback cars. And I stood behind it, and I had a flashback, and I just flipped it off. And the guys were laughing. They're like, what are you doing? I said, I chased that car so many damn times. I was like, boy, I see that thing in my sleep.
That's awesome. So one of my best friends is a devoted Corey LaJoie fan, and he's actually gotten to talk to Corey a couple of times, and the running joke is my buddy Tyler Turner. He always retweets Corey's stuff, or most of his stuff, with the GOAT emoji. So that's kind of the thing they have going back and forth there. The Tyler kid I'm talking about is the guy who designed the new Busch Pole Trophy like a year and a half ago. So he wanted me to say hey, and he's a huge Corey fan, so he was excited that I was coming on here. Thank you, Randy.
So am I. Cool.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Our next question comes from Josh Ward. Josh, go ahead.
Hey, Randy. Speaking of Pontiac, what happened in '95 with Bill Davis racing? Didn't seem like he had a fair chance after, 14 races or so?
Yeah, correct. I'm still waiting to get paid, matter of fact. One of my wonderful contracts. I talked to Bobby. I said, Bobby, Labonte, he was just leaving there. And I said, hey, I got an opportunity. Bill's kind of pumping me here to come over and drive this thing. He goes, you have a job? I said, no. He goes, well, that means you need one. I said, yeah. He goes, it's a job. I was like, okay. I said, that's it? He goes, that's it. I was like, okay, nothing good, nothing bad. So I was like, okay. It wasn't fun. It was when I go up there 3 days a week, and the guys were more worried about running an RC race car out in the field that had a hell of a track out behind the shop, and that seemed like the majority of the time was spent on RC cars rather than race cars. I mean, we had some good people, but but it all starts at the top, and it's kind of, I don't know, it wasn't fun. And then Bill Davis finally said to me a couple years ago, he says, hey, we found out that we took the motor that you had at Michigan. I got fired after Michigan, and brought it to RCR, put it on the dyno, and it was 65 horsepower off. I was like, oh, thanks. I guess it was all me. Yeah, okay, and you fired me. Okay, thank you. You didn't rehire me back. You ain't paying me. Great. Thank you very much. But, I mean, that was a different, that was those bank people. I met a bunch of those people. That was a different world. Boy, that bank people, that's a whole different world.
Yeah, it's too bad because that team had some success, over the years, but
they had good people there.
Yeah, good drivers, good people. Just it was kind of up and down, it seemed, for that team. Thanks for your time.
All right. Our next question comes from Eric. Eric, go ahead.
All right. Hey, Randy. Back again. How much of a kick did you get out of Corey's face scheme in the Daytona 500 year before last?
Well, you know what? It's a different world that we live in. And the amount of coverage that thing got, it was amazing. That was a marketing company, Old Spice marketing company that was trading it off. And somebody said, and Corey wasn't up for it at first. He said, I don't want my face on no car. But at the end, okay, it worked out okay. I mean, he needed to put his grill across the front and get a free deal on dentistry.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a unique story and a unique look, that whole Speed Weeks. Couldn't miss it, that's for sure. So.
Oh, I got a cool screenshot in nighttime with sparks going over it. He's following somebody, and the guy bottomed out, and the sparks are going around. It's a cool shot.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
All right, Randy, listen, man, I appreciate your time. It looks like that's about all the questions that we got. Listen, I really do appreciate you being here, so thank you, man. Hey, look at that. The mute button does work on Randy LaJoie.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, man. Seriously, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. No problem. Thank you.
All right, man. Take care.
Yep.
And listen, that is one of the things that I have always enjoyed about Randy. You can give him a hard time, and you can laugh back and forth with him. Probably one of the most favorite times that I ever had at a racetrack was during a rain delay at Daytona. That was a fun day. Just listening to Randy LaJoie tell stories. I can't even remember who all was in there, but there were several of us, and it was actually in the NASCAR hauler. So we were just waiting out that rain delay, and that was a good day. So I really did enjoy that. So thank you so much to Randy for being here. And you guys, I can't wait for you guys to find out who's going to be on next week's call. Next week's call is going to be pretty cool. So tell your friends. Tell them to sign up because you do not want to miss it. He's a Cup guy, and he's a Cup guy with a little bit of recognition. So that's all I'm going to say. I want to make sure that it's set up, that it's all lined up and everything. I want to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed and the schedule's meshed. So we will announce that later on. Now we have another trivia contest. Everything I think went real well last week. Rather than the first person to answer the trivia question, everybody who answers the question correctly will get a point. So that will be good. Then the person with the most points at the end of the month will receive a copy of either Dale versus Daytona or NASCAR's Greatest Race. So is everybody ready? Okay. All right, here we go. Question number 1. Ned Jarrett once spun Richard Petty out of the lead, and after the race, Richard and his brother Maurice angrily confronted Ned before he got out of his car. At what track did this take place? Okay, the option here would not necessarily be to wait until everybody else answers and then type your answer because the answer is actually Asheville. That happened at New Asheville Speedway. So that was one of the great stories that Ned Jarrett told when we talked to him. But he said that he intentionally did not get out of the car because he knew that Richard and Maurice were going to be coming after him. And he admitted that he actually fully intended to spin Richard out of the lead because they had gotten together at Bowman Gray Stadium. Richard had spun Ned out of the lead, and Ned carried that for, I think he said, more than a year until he got his chance on a short track. He wasn't going to spin anybody out of the lead at a super speedway. He wasn't going to spin anybody out of the lead at a super speedway. Wasn't going to hurt anybody, but that happened at New Asheville Speedway. All right. Question number 2. Rick Mast made his first Winston Cup start for what car owner? Okay. It looks like the questions are maybe getting a little bit harder. Mission accomplished. All right. Rick Mast made his first Winston Cup start for Buddy Baker. All right. I think he made the first start at Bristol. Okay. Randy LaJoie, question number 3. Randy LaJoie was involved in an early accident in the 1996 season finale at Homestead. What driver's accident brought out the caution that got Randy back on the lead lap? It was not Buckshot. We can't blame everything on Buckshot. Josh Ward, you're kind of sort of close, but the answer is Rodney Combs. And according to David Green, Rodney Combs spun on purpose or stopped on the track on purpose to bring out the caution to allow Randy to get back on the lead lap. David Green insisted that there was some kind of deal in place. Okay, so that's what was going on there. Okay, question number 4. What major difference did Rick notice in Lyndon Amick when they got together for the podcast interview? Very good. Tattoos. And again, I told the story on the podcast, but when I was with Lyndon in the Busch Series in the late 1990s, he was very clean cut and an MRO guy. Not that being clean cut means that you can't have tattoos, but I just had this image of him. And when I went to the restroom and came back, he was taking off his jacket and his arms were covered from the shoulder all the way down to his wrists in tattoos. So he had sleeves. He had tattoo sleeves. And one thing led to another. And he told me exactly what those tattoos meant. And that wound up being one of the best, if not the best, 2 episodes of the podcast that we have had, because when he told that story, it became more than just a NASCAR podcast. So that was, yeah, that was a cool situation, a cool story. So, all right, number 5. What driver did Steve Wade nickname the Neptunian Ambassador? Okay, very good. Alan Quickie. Alan Quickie. That column that Steve wrote after Alan died is probably, I would put that column probably easily in the top 5 all-time columns that appeared in Winston Cup Scene, because we all, at least I did, had this image of Alan Quickie as very quiet, very to himself, a little bit standoffish, very bookish, an engineer. And the column that Steve Wade wrote after Alan died gave me a whole new picture of who Alan Quickie was. So I actually included that column in the commemorative issue that we did with Darlington last year, because I just felt it was such a good column. And he's not on the call anymore. He had to step away. So yeah, I'm not saying it just because he's on the call. Question number 6. When we first began the show, we ran several interviews that were already in the can from Rick's previous podcast, Spun Out and Half Turned Over. Who was the first person interviewed specifically for the Scene Vault podcast? Fred Petke, you're good. It was Rusty Wallace. Now that was either a good guess or I don't know, but yeah, Rusty was the very first person that we interviewed specifically for the Scene Vault. Basically, everything up until then was I already had it in the can from Spun Out and Half Turned Over. Question number 7. What did we trade Dale Earnhardt Jr. in exchange for him coming on the show? Very good, Chris Perry. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. If you said T-shirt, I'm going to give you a point. I'm going to give Chris Perry 2 points because he knew that it was a Jimmy Means T-shirt. And one of these days, I'll tell the rest of the story. Question number 8. Steve Wade visited the set of which NASCAR-related movie? Justin Hall, very good. Last American Hero. Yeah. He talked about having lunch with Jeff Bridges and talking to him a little bit about their movie making deals or whatever. Question number 9. Bobby Labonte was stricken with what ailment shortly before his first season with Joe Gibbs Racing? That to me is amazing. I knew that nobody would get that, and more people got this than they did anything else. It was Graves' disease, so very good. Okay. There are no wrong answers to this next one, and you get a point for each name you give. Okay? You've got 30 seconds from the end of the question. What future interview guests would you like to see on the Scene Vault podcast? You got 30 seconds. Okay. All right. Okay, we're good. We're good. We're good. Listen, I love doing this show, And I love getting the interviews that we get. We've got one coming up after DW that I really think is going to get a lot of attention because it's somebody that I would never have guessed I would be able to interview. Somebody, yeah, I think it's going to get a lot of interviews. I think it's going to get a lot of attention. So listen, guys, I appreciate you guys being here tonight. Tell everybody about this and let's get some more people on here. So I appreciate your time and I will see you next week.